Well, thank you everybody for joining this Instagram talk, and thank you for the Purple Turtle team for organizing and inviting me to talk on this very important area. Uh, uh, I appreciate each and every one of you joining in. Uh, this is not a one-way talk. It is going to be an interaction, although I'm going to be talking much more of it, and you guys will be typing. So try and send me your questions. If I can read them while I'm talking, I'll try to answer them, but I will certainly have some time at the end to answer all your questions. You can also communicate with me through my email. That's roshanjaindr@gmail.com. If there are any pertinent or personal questions that you want to ask, I'll be happy to answer them. And that's why I'm here. So I'm Dr. Roshan Jain. I'm one of the psychiatrists at Apollo Bangalore, and I'm a practicing psychiatrist, which means I see a lot of patients, individuals and families who experience stress, anxiety, depression, and a wide array of other mental health and emotional problems, including addictions. Uh, so I come across people with stress and anxiety all the time on a daily basis, and I make efforts to advise them and give them appropriate suggestions to contain their anxiety and come out of it in many cases. And most people do, which is good. So today's talk is really about combating stress-induced anxiety. So when we say combating, means we are actually talking about facing it, facing the stress, which might go on to induce anxiety and depression. And by combating, we are really talking about developing resilience. So resilience simply means our ability to face challenges and stresses and bounce back and recover. So by facing challenges and stresses, we tend to bounce back and recover quicker, and we become stronger emotionally, so to speak. And it's not as similar to as endurance, but somewhat similar, where if you keep doing exercise over and over, then you become more endurant and you're better able to tolerate tiredness. Likewise, when you face stress, so you become more resilient, and that's good. That's not a bad thing. Before I go on to talk about the anxiety itself, I want to say that this talk is not intended to add to any infodemic or information overload, which we are already overwhelmed with. But what I want to re-emphasize is that I'm going to talk about some simple strategies where to identify anxiety, to manage it, and hopefully to contain before it controls you. And we're going to talk about normal or understandable anxiety and abnormal anxiety or an illness or anxiety disorder. So we need to categorize between these two things, which is pretty important for most of us. So what is understandable anxiety? So a lot of people feel that anxiety is wrong, anxiety is dangerous, and anxiety should not be experienced. I think that's is wrong. Uh, Understandable anxiety simply means that it's a reaction appropriate to the situation. So, for example, when we are going through difficult life situations, for example, or where the situation has uncertainty and lack of clarity of an outcome. For example, an examination or an interview. Then we experience an emotional reaction wherein we feel discomfort, unease, and a sense of fear. Uh, Such an anxiety is a normal anxiety, is appropriate to situation. When the situations pass, for example, after the exams are finished or after you resolved a conflict or an argument, then the anxiety pass and we then move on to other things. So that is a completely normal anxiety and it's normal reaction. Whereas an anxiety disorder simply means that a person, after the situation has passed, continue to remain restless, experience sense of unease and discomfort, and is not able to come out of such situation. And that anxiety becomes excessive, it becomes overwhelming, and it starts to affect day-to-day life through the day. For example, ability to attend to things, concentrate, and in the night have a restful sleep, having difficulties in getting off to sleep, waking up at night, and waking up early in the morning. So it affects daytime, your work, your life, and so on, and it affects the nighttime sleep. Plus, it might add to other things like irritability, restlessness, anger problems, and so on. So there are many different manifestations of So abnormal, excessive anxiety. Now, an excessive anxiety may also be associated with bodily symptoms. For example, uh, a racing heartbeat, or awareness of heartbeat, or chest tightness, or chest discomfort, uh, or sweating and trembling and dizziness. Now, these are all physical aspects of the anxiety itself because of the increase in amount of hormones in your body when one person is feeling anxious. So the cortisol and adrenaline causes some of these physical symptoms of anxiety. As anxiety resolves, the hormone levels fall and the symptoms pass. So there are psychological aspects as well, which includes apprehension, fear for the future, catastrophic thoughts, and looking at the worst outcomes in everything. So these are psychological factors. So when the anxiety symptoms are excessive, when there are prominent psychological symptoms, when there are prominent physical symptoms, and the anxiety simply won't pass, even when you tried some simple methods and maneuvers, then it becomes an abnormal anxiety, or from clinical point of view, what we call as an anxiety disorder. Now, there are many different types of anxiety disorder. We don't need to go through all of them, but I think what we need to do is to understand the common types of anxiety uh, and why we are feeling so anxious. Now, given the pandemic itself, which is sweeping across the world, I've seen one common reaction that people present with, which is stress. And the other two common emotions that I'm seeing is fear and sadness. Fear is manifesting as anxiety, is manifesting as irritability, is manifesting as anger problems, and sadness, which is blues or melancholic mood, in many cases is manifesting as a depression and a state from which the person is having difficulty in getting out of. Now, we are not going to talk about the sadness and the melancholy per se, but we're going to talk mostly about anxiety, okay, and how we manage that. Now, one of the things, just to go back, is to say, why is the current situation so anxiety provoking? Well, we're facing with an unprecedented crisis, something that we've not seen in our living memories. We're facing with a crisis which has no end in sight, facing a crisis which is profound, has profound uncertainty. We have no specific treatments for it, although there's a lot of talk about various medicines, but no effective proposed treatment yet. We have no sight of a vaccine yet, and there are hopes that we get one next year, but there's nothing concrete yet. And then to add to the assault, we have a barrage of catastrophic news about death and disease and the spread, and we are counting the number of spreads and number of unfortunate deaths on a daily basis, and which is going to be very, very anxiety provoking and overwhelming. And to add to all that, we have proliferation of information, and as I mentioned, an infodemic. WHO simply defined infodemic as a situation where there is an overload of information about a problem, which makes it difficult or impossible to look at or find solutions. So, and unfortunately, a lot of the information or infodemic that we are coming across in social media, especially some in the news and television, a lot of the information is fake, uh, and that is adding to fear mongering and paranoia. So, uh, so that is making the whole situation quite alarming, and our reactions to such a situation is appropriate. Now, what we want to do is to say that how do we reduce or contain this appropriate anxiety and prevent it from spiraling into an illness that requires more than common known remedial measures. Uh, because once you get into the illness realms, it leads to a breakdown. And normal anxiety, as I mentioned, is common and it passes with passing situation, but anxiety disorders are not necessarily good for your health. There's been a lot of evidence to say that unremitting continuous anxiety is damaging for your health. It wears you down physically and psychologically. It leads to a wide array of physical conditions, including high blood pressure, heart problems, and so on. There's evidence from research to suggest that continuous anxiety can lead to a 65% increase in heart conditions and about 64% increase in risk of stroke. So it is not all that safe, the anxiety disorder. Okay. So how are we going to manage this? I think to manage understandable anxiety and preventing from getting it to pathological or anxiety disorders. I think what we need to do is to need to tap into the source of anxiety, firstly. And the source of anxiety is mainly the information. So first and foremost, I would advise people to start to look at changing your mindset. And changing your mindset simply is to look at things in a positive way. So when you look at the news and information, try to focus on the positive aspects of the news about the pandemic. Say, for example, we often look at how many people are infected, how many are dead, how much it's spreading, what mayhem it's causing across the world. I think instead of that, we need to start to look at the positive aspects of coronavirus news, wherein we look at how many have recovered. For example, not many people can say that, out of 33,000 current cases of coronavirus, 8,000 have recovered, and there are 25,000 active cases. So that's the total number of cases in India. So which is good. So a lot of people are recovering. We also need to look at which states have become corona-free. For example, many people would be happy to know that Goa is one of the first corona-free states, and so on. So we need to look at that the doubling rate of the infection has dropped from 3 days at the onset of the lockdown in India, and now the infection, the number of cases are doubling after every 11 days. So in real numbers, that is pretty good. The doubling rate has slowed down, although it's not as slow as other countries, but we are doing quite good. So that's positive news. So when you change the mindset, you start to feel different. And you need to, and by doing so, by focusing on positive news, you get away from negativity and pessimism, which is as infectious as the virus itself. Next, I think we need to move on to the what I call as the 3 C's. And the 3 C's simply means that first C is consumption, then connection and communication. So consumption, herein I'm asking you to look at a reduction in consumption of news and social media, especially social media, because too much of information is overwhelming, and people were already overwhelmed with the information even before the lockdown. So I think you need to cut away from the news, and to only follow one or two credible sources of information, like the government website that I was going through, mygov.in or who.int or Arogya Setu, or the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare website is extremely good in terms of getting information about everything that you wanted to know, including the masks, what you should do, where you should go, what happens, how do you hand wash. Every information is officially presented there in a very professional manner. So one or two sources of information, and reducing general consumption of news, because reduction of consumption means reduction of negativity and reduction of negative vibrations from everywhere around you. Okay, and the other C I want to talk about is to connect and to communicate. There's a saying called a problem shared is problem halved, which means that when you're in difficulty, when you talk about your problem, then the problem seems to reduce in intensity and you feel unburdened, and you also move from being problem oriented to solution oriented. So that's what you need to do. Try to talk and communicate. And as our Prime Minister said very pertinently in one of his Man Ki Baat speeches, where he said, during the lockdown, maintain social distancing but enhance social connection, which means that even though you might be isolated and restricted, you are not alone. You need to connect with people who are meaningful, people who you're close to, people who are your well-wishers, and you need to effectively communicate your concerns, your worries, and perhaps answer the concerns and worries of those who communicate with, particularly, for example, your family members, elderly parents, and children. And in doing so, one, you feel better, and two, you'll make possibly a very effective use of expensive devices that you carry in your pocket. Okay, and the one of the most important things I want to tell you is that you need to acknowledge and accept emotions. And the herein, when we say from psychiatric point of view, is that when we acknowledge something, then it is the beginning of change. So we need to acknowledge that we feel anxious, we feel sad, we feel depressed, we feel upset, and we need to accept those emotions, to say those emotions are real, and those emotions are reactions to external reality. So, for example, the external reality is the pandemic and the spread, and that's not about to change. We are not in control, but the way we react to those external realities is in our control. So we can choose to change those reactions. But before we do that, we need to acknowledge and we need to accept our emotions. Uh, while we do that, we also need to acknowledge and accept the uncertainty. So we need to say that things are uncertain, and uncertainty is discomforting, but it is not dangerous. You have to understand that. Okay. Uh, take for example, ask yourself, how many times have I done something which I was uncertain about, and how many times have I accepted something which I was not 100% sure. And what you'll be surprised is that on many occasions you had done things which you were not certain or 100% about, but you still went ahead and did it, and it was okay. So likewise, you need to accept uncertainty and also accept that you're not alone and we are all in it together. And by that collective feeling, you will feel better. Uh, so these are common parameters of managing anxiety: acknowledging and accepting your emotions, reducing consumption of social media and news, changing your mindset, and then connection and communication. So these are common factors which will reduce the source of anxiety, which will reduce the burden of your anxiety, and which will help you to acceptance of the anxiety. Thereby, you feel a little bit better given the difficult situation that we are in. The other common parameters of anxiety management is relaxation. And relaxation can come into different categories for different people. Of course, for a lot of people, it'll just be having a good night's sleep. And let me tell you something: in my clinical practice, 90% of patients that I see uh, don't prioritize their sleep. They think that 2 hours of less sleep will give them 2 hours of more of productivity. I can tell you very clearly that sleep deprivation is a big health hazard. And in a pressing times like this, people are finding it increasingly difficult to sleep. And there are many reasons for that. One, they're anxious and they're not containing their anxiety enough. Two, being at home all the time, they're spending a lot of time, which is now disrupting their routine and pattern. So many are having daytime naps, which is making their sleep more difficult at night. Two, people are habitually sleeping late while binging on the Netflix or other media series, and they are waking up late, and then they're just feeling tired and amotivated in the daytime. Uh, and three, people, if they are sleeping, they're not sleeping enough. So what we need to have is a structure and routine to your sleep: sleeping at a particular time, waking at a particular time, avoiding unnecessary day naps, uh, and ensuring that your sleep is prioritized as uh, as much as anything else in the daytime. You have to ensure that you sleep for 7 to 8 hours per night for all age groups. If children under 5 years of age need to sleep for 12 hours, but for older people and elderly people, we need at least a minimum of 8 hours of sleep, preferably all of it being at night. So prioritize your sleep. The other thing regarding the sleep is to avoid stimulants, for example, coffee and tea and cigarettes. Anything that might disrupt your sleep is a complete no-no. Especially having coffee, tea, and stimulants after 8 o'clock in the night is almost certainly going to disrupt your sleep for the next 2 to 3 hours. And of course, other stimulants like alcohol is all to be avoided at night. So by doing so, by avoiding stimulants and by structuring your sleeping pattern, you're going to possibly get better good night's sleep. The other way to improve your sleep is to try and meditate, uh, deep, rhythmic breathing at night. So a breathing meditation at night, ideally before sleeping for 15 minutes and soon after waking in the morning. In doing so, you'll do two things. One, uh, you'll sleep better because you're just simply psychologically and mentally rested. So you might have better sleep. And then soon after waking, you get up and meditate for 15 minutes. So you probably start off the day quite well. So in doing so, your sleep quality will improve. The other relaxation technique I say is exercise. Exercise is a very potent relaxant. So it takes the tiredness out of you. It activates your body and mind, and uh, it keeps you more mentally and physically agile. So try to get some amount of exercise on a daily basis. I know not everybody does exercise, but you need to be active in some ways possible, and you could do minor physical exercises or stretching at home. Some might find yoga as a form of exercise, which can be easily done at home without any equipment. And other people might find that they can do exercises on terrace using YouTube, for example, or other apps which are quite effective. Uh, if you do exercise, then it needs to be for 30 to 45 minutes each day for at least 4 to 5 days a week, at least 4 days a week. And if you can get that level of exercise, then not just that you'll feel physically active and motivated, but less melancholic and less anxious. There's a good saying which I always remember is that food is the most commonly abused substance and exercise is the most underutilized antidepressant, which means that when we feel anxious and tensed, we abuse food, and therefore people eat a lot of food when they're emotional, and exercise is an effective antidepressant. So it's proven to be effective in anxiety and depression, and it's most underutilized. So I suggest you start considering it, get some exercise, and if you've already been doing some exercise, then increase the intensity because you got all the time. Other relaxation method is to sit down and meditate. And I mentioned earlier about meditation before sleep, but if you can do it for longer, then I would recommend you do meditation in the morning for half an hour or 45 minutes, and ideally some meditation in the daytime or night. And daytime meditation would be when you're feeling anxious. This will bring your mind to the present, which is quite opposite of anxiety, where the mind is fluctuating between the past, where you regret what should have happened, or you're worrying about the future, where you think what might happen, or catastrophizing about future. So you're like a pendulum fluctuating between the past and the future. And by meditating, you bring your mind to the present, and that then goes on to make you feel a bit more calmer and a bit more happier. Okay, good. So that is what you need to do for anxiety. One of the things I want you to remember is that whether it's understandable or normal anxiety, or clinical or pathological anxiety, it is quite important that you use some simple, effective strategies to manage your anxieties and to prevent the anxiety taking control of you. And where the anxiety has got out of control, it's causing significant disruption to your life and sleep and your functioning, then I think it might be pertinent for you to seek professional help. And professional help, I mean talking to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And what do? They will help to evaluate whether your anxiety is manageable with the common remedies or whether it needs further intervention, which in most cases will be talking interventions and systematically working through your thought processes and changing your associated behavior. And in some cases, if the anxiety is so disabling, then it might be worth considering short doses of medication. I must remind everybody very briefly that medication includes antidepressants and tranquilizers. Now, antidepressants are not addictive. They have to be taken for 4 to 6 weeks initially. They're not addictive. They're safe in most medical conditions, and they need to be prescribed by a psychiatrist or a medical doctor. Whereas tranquilizers are quite effective, but needs to be taken for a very short duration as they are addictive and can cause drowsiness amongst other problems. And if it's taken for more than 6 weeks, the tranquilizers, then they can become addictive and can be difficult to get out of. So if medication are considered, then you need to consider antidepressants at low doses. And most people who take antidepressants, one, they feel better on them, and two, they come out of medication. Okay, so that brings us to the end of what I wanted to say, and I guess it's been about 20-25 minutes. So let's look at some of the questions, and I'll try and see whether I can scroll up and answer the questions. One of the person is asking that if you sleep in the morning at 5 o'clock and get up at 11, 12, near about, and didn't sleep the night, what should I do? So I think this is a very common question. I think sometime it can be quite difficult that if you're not got enough sleep, then obviously you're sleeping late. But I think if you're sleeping at 5 o'clock, then you need to ask yourself, why are you sleeping at 5 o'clock in the morning? Are you keeping yourself up by watching television or reading books or having coffee in the middle of the night or perhaps a cigarette? And then you're not able to sleep, and then you simply catch up sleep until midday next day. And if you're doing that, then remove the coffee, tea, and cigarettes and stimulating activities in the night, including television and social media, at least a couple of hours before sleep. And then try to sleep. And if you struggle to sleep until 5 o'clock, still get up by 8 o'clock. So you might be sleep deprived for that day, but do that. again, take away the stimulant activities from the next day, and the sleep rhythm will be corrected. So try to get up at least at the same time. If not, you're not able to sleep at the same time, and the body will be forced to sleep. So if you get up early for one day, the next day you're already sleepy uh, earlier than your usual time. So try that, and it's a simple method, and it works out well. And if it doesn't work out, then surely can this can be addressed in more detail. Uh, if somebody is asking of oversleeping, 14 hours of sleep per night, I think is unhealthy sleep hours. I think 7 to 8 hours is about healthy. 95% of the data suggests 95% of people need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. People are not, and likewise, when we see crisis patients in India, we always tell them that crisis is an opportunity. In crisis, there is learning. In crisis, we improvise and work through our difficulties. In crisis, we become more resourceful because when we come out of it, there's always a good feeling. It's a bit like uh, struggling with your examinations and studies and curriculum, and you feel bad, you feel angry, you feel frustrated. But when the exams are over, not just that you feel much more relaxed, you feel that you earned the relaxation, and also you feel very confident about yourself to say that if such a situation were to occur again, then you're going to be able to face it much more comfortably. And that's what I'm talking about. This crisis is going to leave us all stronger, and leave us more cognizant, in which means we'll be able to think about what our anxieties are and how to manage them, and always try and make sure that the anxiety don't get out of control and don't spiral out. The couple of quotes I had written here before I answer the next question, which is quite pertinent here again. uh, Dan Millman had said that you don't uh, control, you don't let anxiety control your thoughts. You just have to stop letting them control you. And the other one is nothing diminishes anxiety faster than actions, which means that when you do something about your anxiety, then the anxiety diminishes. And Charlie Chaplin had mentioned quite nicely, we said that nothing is permanent in this wicked world, not even our troubles. Yeah, one of the questions listener is asking about how parents can take care of mental health of their children. Uh, Now, children can be a bit more restless than adults, and children need a bit more of stimulation, not just physical stimulation, but mental stimulation. And when they're younger, they need as much stimulation and as much attention, more attention than older children. So I think it's important to understand the according to the ages of the child, to keep them engaged, um, to keep them occupied, to make them do activities on their own through the use of internet and social media, but also to sit down and spend quality time with them. But most importantly, in time of crisis, especially if you have older children, then you need to answer the questions about the crisis, answer the questions about spread, answer the queries and questions about their own worries. Because when you answer the queries, if you answer the worries, then they're going to feel better, and they're then more likely to share their worries and concerns. So another one is asking about the kids at home are getting anxious, how to deal with them. As I mentioned earlier, same thing. Keep them engaged, keep them occupied, make them do as many activities as possible. For example, our children are doing online football training. You won't believe that. So one of them is learning a musical instrument. Somebody is doing a SAT training, and they're trying to do as many classes as possible. Uh, Keep them connected with their friends, with their social groups, with the and so on. So keep them involved and engaged, very much like you do, and they will feel better. Alcohol consumption almost certainly will make it worse. We've seen a lot of concerns about alcohol consumption. The lockdown has increased the the withdrawal symptoms. It is brought forward many of the people who are consuming excessive amount of alcohol, and many didn't even realize that they were consuming in excess. And when there was lack of availability of alcohol, they realized that their alcohol consumption had indeed got out of control. So They used to say that one glass of alcohol will keeps your heart healthy, but in this time of crisis, and when you have all the time at home, uh, you end up drinking a lot more. So one leads to too many. So I would advise against drinking on daily basis. If you must have a glass of wine on occasions, that's fine, but daily or regular drinking, and especially drinking to contain stress and anxiety, not a good idea. Ideally, people have a drink to enjoy, to enjoy the flavor and effect of alcohol, not to de-stress. Pathological anxiety cannot be diagnosed yourself. Well, you could. There are a lot of questionnaires online, but it's always good to get somebody to tell you whether it is pathological or abnormal or clinical anxiety. And in any which case, even the clinical anxiety don't always need medication. Many of the anxiety can still be treated with talking therapy or psychotherapy. So you could talk to a counselor or a psychologist or psychiatrist, and they can help you to diagnose the condition. But by consulting, they will also guide you to many other aspects of your life that you weren't aware of, and that you could make small changes and prevent the anxiety from keep coming back. So uh, self-diagnosis, well, we have the internet to ourselves, so many of us are doing it, but I would suggest you talk to somebody who knows about it, and that way it's easier. Okay, excellent. So I guess we need to come to the end of the talk. If there's any more questions, I would be happy to answer them before I go. I guess there's no more questions. So thank you very much for listening to this talk. I hope some of the points that I raised here will help you, uh, and some of the points you'll take and use it and bring into action, and try to reduce your anxiety levels as much as possible, because in doing so, one, you will make life more bearable through the remaining of the lockdown, and also you will come out feeling positive and better, to say that you didn't spend all the time in lockdown worrying, but you use the time effectively to do other things. Okay, thank you so much, and all the best. Keep safe and keep active.